Welcome to Tips for the Transition, where we have deep, meaningful conversations about life. We talk about how significant changes like divorce, grief, and career change can affect us, our family, our relationships, and our work, and how to move beyond them. I'm your host, Maria Tomás-Keegan, certified career and life coach for women, and I'm here to support you through the messy seasons of life so you can answer big questions like who am I now and how do I move on from here? If you're ready to consider new options, be inspired, and meet incredible women who are on this life journey with us, you're in the right place. You'll find something in each episode to give you hope and encourage you to move from panic to powerful, from rocky to resilient, and from upside down to right side up. This is Tips for the Transition. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on the Tips for the Transition, the Career Roadmap podcast. I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, your host. And as a career coach, I help professional women who feel stuck. Together, we position them for the career they really want so they can feel fulfilled and create more harmony in their lives. Because when your career isn't a soulful fit, it becomes a soul-sucking experience. So with each weekly conversation on this podcast, I have inspiring guests join me, and these conversations can become resources for you to become more confident, resilient, and brave, to make the moves you want to make, and to do it with more ease and grace. So if something strikes a chord with you as we have this conversation, check out the show description below, and you will find lots of links for my guest and me. So today we're going to hear a personal story about a woman whose experiences caused her to be afraid of using her voice. It's about losing her voice, then finding it again, and learning how to use it to her advantage. Melanie Wood comes to us from Brisbane City, Queensland, Australia, and is an international communication and leadership speaker and a best-selling author. I guess she found her voice. Melanie works with business leaders, teaching them to step up, step out, and lead using their voice. She's on a mission to bring out the heart and authenticity of the speakers, to support growth and transformation. Melanie believes everyone has a story to share, and by creating a nurturing and supportive environment, they will feel empowered to use their voice, to be heard and understood. Melanie's impressive business experience and skills were honed throughout her corporate career in blue-chip companies, not-for-profit, private, and government small businesses, both locally and globally. Melanie has been featured on Fox, NBC, CBS, and more, and as the leading speaking coach, empowering women to have a voice in the world. We call this episode, Your Voice Matters. Hello, Melanie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Maria, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. How are you today, and how is it in Australia?
Yeah, it's good. It's just coming in. It's just coming to winter now for us. So it's sunny days, but it's a lot cooler temperature. So it is. So I do have a blanket over my legs this morning. It's a little bit cooler.
It's so interesting when I speak to my friends in Australia. You're just coming into winter. We here in the States are just coming into summer, and it just seems so odd to me, that we're not all in the same climate. It's interesting, and you stay warm while we have this conversation, okay?
I will, thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. I'd like to hear a little bit about your story about losing your voice and how this was a theme in your life.
Thank you so much, Maria. And I love being able to share this, and now being able to have that voice to share and help other people. And for me, it really started a way back when I was a teenager, and I was super fearless. I had the world was my oyster. You know, I was adventurous and a traveler, and I really wanted to see the world. And I ended up having a dream to actually live in America. I'm originally from Scotland, but here in Australia now. So my big dream was to live in America, because I'd been on holiday and I absolutely loved it. And I looked at ways in which I could be able to go to America and how I could actually then stay. And I ended up having this one-way ticket to America way back when I was 18. And I was so excited. I couldn't wait for this to happen. It was my dream, and I was really excited about it. And then on a night out with friends back home in Scotland, I met a man at that time, and I ended up falling in love. And I binned that one-way ticket to America at that time, and I didn't go. But really in that moment, my life absolutely changed. And in that moment of it actually changing was then due to falling in love with a guy to then getting married. But I actually then ended up in an abusive marriage during that time. And that's where really that losing my voice really started to happen. That adventurous person who had that one-way ticket to America was going to completely start a new life didn't happen. And during that 6 years that I was in that relationship for, I just lost so much of my own identity, so much of my own voice. Like prior to that, I used to speak up for myself. I was very vocal with things, even in the workplace. I was so vocal in standing up for people, and I lost all of that during that time. But I just lost really a sense of what I really wanted to do in the world, to who I actually was. And during that time, I actually just didn't want to be here anymore, because I didn't enjoy the experience that I went through. Was pretty awful, but I didn't know how to get out of it, because I didn't have that voice to be able to help me to get out of it and ask for help. But I was also full of guilt and shame of being able to then say to friends, you know, this is like 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And it's just at that time where people really weren't separating, divorcing, those sorts of things, that I just didn't know how to tell people. And I used to turn up at work. I used to turn up with friends and family and basically say like life was a bed of roses and it was amazing, because I didn't know how to actually say what I was going through. And really, when I look back in it, it's that's when I really lost that voice. But it was also guilt and shame of not really knowing what to say and what to do. And as I say, during that time, I really just didn't want to be here anymore. And I did, like, I was in the shower was like my safe haven, because I was able to lock the bathroom door for me to just have some time for myself. And I remember having a razor in my hand, and I thought, you know, I can't be here anymore, but I'm too scared to leave. And I remember in that moment that I just I prayed to God in that moment and said, if you help me and support me and guide me in how to leave this situation, I will work for the rest of my days helping other people. Not really knowing what that would be, that's what I then said. And interestingly enough, during that time afterwards, I ended up trusting in one of my work colleagues at the time. And I was having a really terrible morning. I turned up at work. And in that moment, she said to me, she literally took off her shoes, came over to me and put mine on and asked me if I was okay. And in that moment, I knew that I had to use my voice to say no, that I wasn't, and to be okay with what was to happen next. And after that, she became such an amazing friend for me. And she literally supported me for an entire year to help me build more of my confidence, to have my voice coming back gradually. And I did end up leaving that relationship because of her. So I did, which was absolutely amazing. And because she shared her story and her story was similar to mine, we were then able to connect. It's the fact that she stood by me for an entire year, even though it wasn't pretty, it wasn't pleasant. I did leave and then go back. I left and then went back, and she was still there no matter what happened. She just knew that I needed that time to be able to do that. And then after I did leave, I then made that promise that I would do something about it, and I would help other people. But I then did nothing for 12 years. I was so resentful, full of anger and hatred for the situation that I'd been in, and the fact that I didn't do anything about it, that I did nothing. So I actually then, throughout that 12 years, I still didn't really have a voice because I didn't know how to use it, because I was just so full of resent and anger. And I really just hated the world for the situation that I'd been in. But it was because I really just didn't know how to get through it. And I still hadn't really shared more about what I had been through during that time with friends and family. So I was still really frozen and stuck around that time. And but again, we all go through certain things in our life to then come out of it at the other end, out of it. But things just started to spiral. Like, I threw myself into work, and that was like my safe haven, to keep me really busy and climb that career ladder, which got me really into leadership, which I absolutely loved. But there was still so much holding me back because I didn't have my voice to speak up in meetings, to have difficult conversations, and to really speak about how I felt as well. So I really spent like a good probably 20 years not really using my voice throughout that entire time. And something that when I look back on it all, it was really because I didn't feel safe to use my voice. Because of that time that I went through in my marriage, I was then scared even afterwards to voice anything, because I knew from that past experience of what I had been through was when you do use your voice, then something bad would happen. So I really even took that in afterwards with different situations that I was in, different relationships that I went into as well, that I was just so scared of speaking my truth, to being honest, to really then standing up for myself in meetings. I was actually really scared because I just didn't feel safe to be able to do that. And then after like the 12 years, an opportunity for me came up to come to Australia on holiday. And please jump in, Marie, if you have any questions before this next part. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. Feel free.
Yeah, you started to talk about how the not having your voice affected your corporate career. Talk a little bit more about that, because we all know that when personal things happen to us that are out of our control, seemingly, and that are detrimental, right, to our spirit, at least, if not many other things, that it's easy to lose our voice. It's easy to hunker down because we want to protect ourselves. So talk a little bit more about how all of that affected you in your corporate career.
And it really did affect me, because I still was full of that resentment and anger. So like, I did take a lot of that into that world, to the point where it was like a defense mechanism to keep me safe, that I would never allow anybody in. So I very much like turned up at work to this is me at work. Like, I don't talk about anything personal. And in that workplace, like, I was very defensive. Like, if people were to ask me to do things and I just didn't feel like I was safe, or I just didn't want to do it because I had spent that time being told what to do for so long, that I didn't want that to happen in the workplace. So got to the point where people were actually a little bit scared of coming to speak to me, because I was very direct and vocal in a way that wasn't the way in which I wanted it to be. But it was a very defensive mechanism in that. And in that, like I suppose as well in the workplace, like that control that I needed for myself, I became quite OCD with certain things that I was able to control. Maybe it was like labels and like cupboards and certain things even on my desk and things that I was doing in my routine. If anybody asked me to maybe stay on or to do things that was outside of my routine of my day, I then would say no, because I felt scared and I didn't know how to be flexible, because control was the only way in which I felt safe to be able to do that. So I then came across as probably just somebody that a lot of people didn't like, but they were kind of scared of as well. But I suppose I wasn't really a team player during that time, because I really didn't know how to do it. I didn't experience in a way that I felt that I could trust people to be able to share a bit more about how I was feeling. But I was also brought up in a way of, when you went to work, you left home at home and you were at work, and you didn't disclose of things, you didn't talk about things. So I very much had that mindset of work was work, and it was black and white, and that was it. And then when you come home, it's home, you don't take work with you. So I very much separated it in a way, but it then lost touch of being more compassionate, being more joyful, and all of these things that I could have been doing in that workplace, that I really pushed people away. And it felt more like I was kind of being a bit more selfish and self-centered in a way of turning up for work, doing everything that I needed to do to keep me safe, was really the big thing for me during that time.
But all of those are defense mechanisms, aren't they?
Yeah.
All of those things. It's so common. It's human nature. It's how we're wired, I think, to protect ourselves. So it's so interesting that you, in hindsight, can see, because I know you're not anything like this person anymore. But in hindsight, you can see how it affected the way you started using your voice, but not in ways that were inclusive of others. Right? They were more exclusive, right?
Yes.
And we live today in an environment of, trying to create this sense of inclusiveness. Mm-hmm. So tell me, how did you learn to overcome all of this?
Thank you. And it's and again, it's been a journey. It's not been an overnight. It's something that I still continue to work on out of that. And definitely it came up to when I had the opportunity to come to Australia. And I was only meant to come for a month, which then extended to the year. And I came over with a friend, and I just knew in my heart that this was my one-way ticket that I had when I was 18, and I was 30 at this point. And I just knew that I needed to come out of my environment, come out of the place in which that happened. And I never say to anybody that you have to, pack a bag and come to the other side of the world to be able to do this. This is my journey of where I'm on in order to make those changes for myself. And really, when I had that one-way ticket to come to Australia, something inside of me changed. Even back home in Scotland, like I saw it as like turning like a new chapter of new opportunities. And even before that I started to make the changes in myself. I started to look at being able to start a business even prior to then as well. And I started to create new friendships, new people around me that had what I was looking for. So I really started to make those small changes even before I came to Australia, with the people I was surrounding myself with. And I started to get into more self-development. these were things that I had never been exposed to, any kind of self-development books. So I started to really learn through books, through the people that I was with, audios and videos and podcasts like this. I started to really learn things about life, things about business, things about mindset. And I really started to become really quite addicted to all of it, because it was something so new. And I really wanted to make those changes, because the life that I had been living was not the life that I wanted anymore. And I didn't know how to change. And surrounding myself with these amazing people made such a change for me. So then when I came to Australia, when I landed here 9 years ago, I really saw it as that new opportunity. And I saw it as that I had to go through what I had been through for, 15 plus years to get me ready for making those changes to what impact that I could make in the world. And when I came to Australia, I continued to do that self-development, to look at the friends that I was creating and bringing around me, and also started to look at what I was doing in the workplace. I was being a lot more choosy about where I would work, what I would do, and I really started to use all that self-development to bring that into the workplace. But I just felt like it was a new start for me, that I could be someone that I've been wanting to be for such a long time, that it wasn't the fact that back home in Scotland that everybody knew who I was. So you would turn up to that person that you would turn up, because you've anchored to those emotions around all of those people. So by doing this meant I could start afresh and turn up every day to that person that I wanted to be able to become. But I really used a lot of that self-development to really be able to link that to really become that person as well.
I love what you said. There are a couple of things I love what you said. That you surrounded yourself, you recognized that the people you surrounded yourself could have great influence in how you could become. That's the other thing you said, that you wanted to become someone different. You wanted to become a better version of yourself, is what I interpreted that to mean.
Yeah.
Am I right about that? Was that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and surrounding yourself with people who can model for you the behavior, the characteristics, the things you do, the things you talk about. That is such a great way to start to test the waters, right? Because you have someone's path to follow.
Yeah.
I love that. I think it's really an essential part of becoming who you want to become, when it's different from who you are right now, is to find people who are role models for you. I love that.
Absolutely.
So what was it like at first when you started to use your voice again?
And it was still quite scary to begin with, because you're still testing the waters. You're still testing the fact that you don't want to use past experiences and being scared. So it was still a gradual, I was still taking what I was learning and testing it with people. I probably did test people quite a lot to be able to test, what their kind of response would be around it as well. So in friendships that I started to, people would ask me things around, what did you do back in Scotland? And, so I started to kind of test out and gradually start to what I was comfortable with sharing. It was also like I'd done, and I started to work with coaches as well. And I started to really align with looking into my values, like what was really important to me, looking into, well, what does Melanie love to do? because I'd lost that sense of identity, that I didn't really know what I loved to do. I would just kind of join other people and go, yeah, I'll do whatever you do. So I really started to look into my values. I started to look into different things that I wanted to be able to try out in Australia, that I wanted to do for me. So in that moment, maybe it was like with my voice, was getting curious to other people and saying, you know, what's some kind of top things to be able to do in this, in Brisbane, in this area, and start to go and do those things for myself. And starting to get curious and asking questions about people. So I probably did a lot of questioning just to really get that connection, but find out more about people and build that connection and build that trust, to the point where I felt more comfortable to share certain things about my past that I wanted to be able to share. So questioning was definitely my go-to to be able to do that. And that really helped to have my voice again, to build that trust and that connection that's so important as humans, but just to change that relationship dynamic to what I had seen in the past, and being around a lot more positive people to what I had been in the past as well. I think that's what's really important to become that person, is really see it, that, you know, people can be positive and you don't have to come along with anger and hatred and resentment and be that person. So that's really where I went with finding my voice again.
And I think, you know, you touched on something I think that's very important. We all have stories, right? We all have pasts. Some parts of those pasts are not very pretty, right? But I think we can learn to tell the story differently.
Yes.
Especially so that we're not revisiting all of the anger and resentment that you talked about, but that you're flipping the narrative so that it is this, yes, this happened to me, but the result of that is where I am today. And that's the silver lining. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I talk with clients all the time about negotiating for what they want. Yeah. So I would love to hear a bit about your experience and maybe your advice about using your voice to negotiate for what it is you want. Is there something that we need as a foundation to do that?
Definitely. And that's coming back to things about your values. So if you're looking to negotiate or to stand up for yourself, come back to your values. Like, does this align with who you are, what you're wanting to achieve as well? I always say is like, come back to your heart. Like, even before coming onto this podcast, I always have a hand on my heart, and I say, like, what needs to come through today that someone who's watching or listening on the other end needs to hear. So again, but coming back to your heart and knowing in your heart that you're worthy of maybe that promotion or that wage rise, or being able to create a different sort of working environment or conditions for yourself. Come back to your heart, because your heart knows the most and knows you. So values, your heart. Also, like writing things down, like writing down things around your worth, your value, to remind yourself that you are worthy of what you're asking for. You're of value to what you're asking for, and really stepping into that person that you want to become. Like, even if it's scary to do it, really be able to get grounded. Like I said, there's a lot of things that we can do even before we even speak about anything. Come back to growing that inner strength within you. And whether that's writing it down for a week before you say it, and really become that person to do that. And then, you know, things like I have, as well as audios that I give clients to be able to rehearse and play out that conversation that you might be having. Like, mental rehearsal is such an amazing tool to be able to use. So then your brain doesn't know the difference between whether it's real or whether it's not. So if you can play that out then the conversation goes out a lot differently around it as well. So getting clear on your values, really growing that inner strength. The other thing is, when you do share your voice, is that you want to plan and prepare what you're going to say. That then gets clarity. You're then not going into doing it and then thinking, oh, what am I going to say? What's the other person going to be saying back? So you prepare around knowing who you're talking to, what's really the end goal that you're looking to achieve out of that meeting or conversation, to then have and share your voice, to then thinking about, well, what's the core information that you're going to share? What do they need to know? And then what's really the next steps that you're wanting the person to do from it? And then that's what you do before. And then during it, you want to think about, well, what's your receiver going to then potentially have questions for you? So if you can prepare that out, it's going to give you more confidence, and you're going to be able to feel like you've got that confidence in your voice as well.
Boy, you hit the nail on the head, I think. The whole idea of practicing, being prepared, all that can do is build your confidence.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important in a negotiation situation, whatever it is. We negotiate all the time, every day. We're not just talking about negotiating for a promotion or a raise, or to get a job, and negotiating your salary for a new position or something like that. We negotiate all the time. And the more prepared we are, the more confident we are that we own who we are and what we want, and know, and you hit this nail on the head too, know that we're worthy of asking.
Absolutely.
And I think you got that one. You got one that all buttoned up. That was great. Okay, so you talked about heart. And you talk about it a lot, about bringing heart and authenticity to the speaker, to your voice, right? Tell us how to go about doing that.
And so I do teach. I'm actually Heart Math Institute certified to teach these tools and resources. And something for me, after working with coaches and coming back to that trust that I've been working on, opening my heart to certain situations as well. So as I say, when everything about my values in my business is everything to do with honesty, transparency, heart-centered. So when we come back to being heart-centered, and it was things that I learned, particularly to come away from anger and resentment, to have more compassion and love and joy. So that's why I always say, when we talk about heart, I always have my hands on my heart. So when we are then speaking and communicating with people, if we can then come from a place of empathy and compassion for the other person, no matter what it is that they might be reacting or displaying, because I've been that person in the past. And if I had somebody that was more heart-centered in that situation, things would be different. Not that I want to go back and change that. But if we can be those people that no matter what conversation or situation we're in, and really come back and connect with your heart, to know that is a human being on the other side, and they might be going through things, and they might just not have a voice to share it. And it's not always directed at you. But if you're wanting to stand up in a meeting or to have conversation with friends and family, just always come back to your heart and think, what does your heart want to tell you, to share with you, to what that message is? Because we just have more of a sense of freedom. We have more of a sense of understanding. But as we're saying in the last piece about, having your value and your worth, it's just coming back and closing your eyes, putting your hands, if that's comfortable to you, and just feel that breath flowing in and out of your heart area. If this is in a position where this is not something that I could have done you know, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have felt safe to do this. So for anybody watching and listening, if you feel the same, then think about, you know, focusing your attention on your foot or your elbow or maybe a picture on your wall, and go outwards to then maybe think about coming in if that's comfortable to you as well. But if you can, really could just come back and take some deep breaths in through your heart space. And if that's before you're about to then use your voice, do it for 30 seconds before. And then even if it's during and you're maybe getting a bit anxious or fearful or nervous or anything like that, you can still do this. You don't necessarily have to put your hands on your heart. You can just keep your eyes open. And I can do this right now. And as I'm breathing, I'm breathing in and out of my heart area. And this is a way of settling, self-soothing and settling ourselves. It's also a way of, if we're feeling anxious or we're going into that fight or flight or freeze mode, what happens is our heart then sends a message to our brain to then say that we need to then look at, what are we going to run? Are we going to fight? Are we going to freeze? So the heart, coming back to the heart breathing, is a way to be able to come back to our heart, to send a message to our brain to say it's safe. We don't need to do any of those things. We're not in the primal stage anymore, as much as our bodies are still affected by that and can react in those situations. So being able to come back to that, because if we then don't settle ourselves and we're in that adrenaline and cortisol and fight and flight and freeze mode, then we shut down parts of our brain that is in terms of communication, memory, logic. So it means all of those things go absolutely out of the window, and then you don't feel as confident. You then can't find your words that you're looking to be able to speak about. So always coming back to breathing is a way to regulate yourself and tell yourself that you're safe in this situation, even if the outside thing isn't a traumatic event. It's just sometimes we can have it based on the situation that we're in or how someone reacts. So it's a way that we get to grow that inner strength and empower ourselves to be able to self-regulate.
Wow. I love that. It's simple, but it's not easy.
No.
But it takes some focus, it takes some practice, but essentially it is becoming aware of the moment.
Yep.
Right? Getting in the moment, understanding that you don't have to fight or flee or freeze. You have a choice.
Yeah.
Right? But until you can calm yourself down in the moment, it's hard to see that.
Yeah.
It's hard to see that. So that's a thank you for sharing that practice. I think that's a great reminder for us that it really is kind of simple what we can do, not always easy, and it does take practice for it to start to come naturally to us.
Definitely it does.
All right. Well, we could talk about this for a long time. We are coming to the wrap up of our today's show, and I want to give you an opportunity to share some of your practical tips. You've shared a few along the way, so remind us what those are, or share some new ones with us if you would.
Yeah, definitely. So coming back to your values, coming back to your statements around being worthy of what it is that you are wanting to be able to share with people, starting to really plan and prepare to anything that you are going to do with your voice, that will then build that confidence, and you'll start then being able to do it without even thinking about having to do that either. And then coming back to your heart. But I think if you come back to your values, your own identity, your own mindset, one tool that I do want to quickly do share with you, particularly around using your voice and communication, is that it's when we're in these moments, and it's something that I have done and I continue to work on, it's unlearning the way in which we have been taught how to communicate and things that have happened to us in the past. So we want to unlearn And we want to look at what's our habits, what's the patterns and the defaults that we go to when we're in certain situations, and then start to look at how we can change that to have a new way of communication, a new way of looking at how you communicate as well. Whether that's coming back to your heart and breathing to make that change, but it's really working at what some maybe 3 to 5 things that you want to be able to unlearn, and then pick one of them. Do one, maybe it's for 30 days, 60, 90 days. And then once you've mastered that, then go to another one and begin to master that of unlearning. And then these are really subtle ways of doing it without thinking I have 10 things I need to change about the way in which I communicate, because we can't do that. Yeah. So one thing at a time is probably my massive take-home tip for people in terms of using their voice.
That's great advice. I think, you call it unlearning. I think it is learning a new habit that replaces the old one that serves you better.
Yeah.
So unlearning the old habit so you have room to bring in a new habit. I think that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Melanie, we could talk for hours about this. You and I have very similar approaches to things. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, being so transparent with what you went through and how you found your voice again, and the tips and strategies you shared with us today about if anyone out there listening is struggling with not hearing their own voice as they want to, that this is a great episode for them to watch and listen to. So I'm sure our viewers are going to want to connect with you directly. Can you tell us the very best way to do that?
Yeah, definitely. So you can go to my website, which is www.melaniewood.com.au, and then Melanie Wood on social media as well, to be able to find and connect with me as well. But thank you for having me, Maria.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Melanie. Thank you so much for being here today, for coming to us early in the morning. It's tomorrow where you are. And you have a blanket on your legs because it's cold winter there. So I really am so grateful that you could join us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. All right. And for everyone else, thank you for watching and listening. I appreciate that you're a part of this community. If you enjoyed any part of this episode, please leave us a comment or a review. And if there's a star rating where you're watching or listening, please pick a star. And as I said at the top of the show, I love creating and sharing resources for professional women who feel stuck in their careers. So if something in this episode resonates and you'd like to get a fresh perspective, reach out. Let's chat. You'll find all the links to reach to Melanie or me in the show notes below. And I invite you to continue the conversation in my private Facebook group called the Career Transition Roadmap. And you'll find the link for that below as well. So let's meet again here next Wednesday at this normal time, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Because you know what? I believe it's our time to thrive. So let's thrive together. I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan. Till next time, turning transition into triumph.